Hey everyone, Will Hamilton here alongside Maciej Synowka, coach of Urszula Radwanska, the number 37th ranked player in the world. Did I get somewhere close on all that pronunciation?
It was perfect.
Awesome, look at that. I got it done. I'm very pleased with myself. So we were talking a little bit before we started rolling about sort of your story, how you started coaching Urszula, and the lessons you've learned from that, and specifically how we're going to relate a lot of that to recreational players. So I'm just going to let you. Why don't you just get going, and then we'll dig out the key points that's going to help everybody improve their tennis.
Okay, my story with Urszula started almost a year ago. In 2 weeks' time in Morocco, Fez is going to be 1 year. It all happened after Agi won Miami. Urszula's older sister won Miami. Their rankings differed so much. Agi became number 2 in the world. Urszula was number 97. And at that time they were working with Thomas, the coach that's coaching only Agi now, and he couldn't do both of them because their calendars were much different. So he called up and asked me if I can do it. And actually me and Thomas were talking about Urszula a lot earlier, like every time we met privately in Warsaw, we were talking about Urszula, what can we do to help her game. And one thing that was very characteristic for her is the mental side. She had big problems with the mental side, about concentration, about the level of measuring the level of arousement and stuff like that on court. And I like the mental side, so we knew straight away it would be a good connection. We just waited for the right moment to make a proposition to work together.
Okay, well, I like the mental game, because that not only does it just appeal to me personally, but I think it's something that a lot of recreational players don't necessarily focus on. And when you watch pro tennis, you never, quote unquote, see the mental game. You see the forehand, the backhand. That's what people tend to try and copy, and they don't realize the thought process going on. So I want to talk about that in just 1 second. When Tomas called you, what were you doing at the time?
I was watching Aga's final on TV, and it was like 15 minutes after the final, and I just switched the channel, and he's calling me. He says, "Listen, I just got out of the stadium. I'm going with Ula to another tournament, but I cannot do this anymore. We have to find another solution." So
your phone lights up. Were you coaching at the time?
Well, playing? You know, watching tennis, you always watch as a coach. So I was learning, let's say, but I was at a tennis club with friends watching it.
Nice. So describe Urszula's game to start. What kind of player is she?
Well, basically she's a counter puncher, right? The funny thing is when Urszula is characteristic in this way, so is Agi, that they've been coached all their lives by one guy, their father.
Right.
And when you're coached by one person, you have one style of let's say teaching that you got your whole life. And with that, they have always paid attention during practice. They have always paid attention to controlling the ball and not making mistakes. And that's the most important thing that they always have done. If you see them on practice on Tuesday morning or Friday afternoon, hard court, clay court, indoors, outdoors, they always say about control and about not making mistakes. Those are the two most important things that they pay attention to. And actually you can see that when Ula's playing, you can see a lot of control in her game, and she pays a lot of attention not to make the mistakes.
So you talk about control. One thing I found quite interesting is that they don't hit with much topspin.
Yeah.
Sometimes they hit and you can literally read the letters on the ball as it travels over.
Yeah.
And isn't that in a way a little surprising, because you would say, well, look at someone like Rafael Nadal, he's got amazing control, he also has an unbelievable amount of rotation. So people tend to equate spin with control, but not in the case of the Radwanskas. And great for recreational players, because we can't hit a million, RPMs a minute like Rafa, but we certainly can hit flat.
5,000 actually. 5,000.
Is it 5,000?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's not a million. Okay.
Around 5,000. Yeah.
So talk a little bit. How are these girls so consistent and have so much control, but they hit so flat?
First of all, it's because of the differences in the way that women and men are built, right? Women have much smaller bones and much smaller muscles, so they cannot work with the wrist so much. That's where the main difference comes from. That's why most of the women play flat and they don't put so much topspin on. And second of all, the girls, they don't play with that much power. They play flat, but they don't play with that much power, so they have plenty of control on the ball. And there is one thing that's very also characteristic for them. Agi, she's a very talented player. You can see when she plays, you can see by the way she handles the racket, by the way the ball leaves the racket. She has a lot of control. She has like a gift from God, hitting the tennis ball. We always laugh with Thomas that you can wake Agi up 12 in the night and tell her to go and hit a ball and she won't make a mistake. She'll be hitting the balls this much above the net and this much at the end of the baseline. She doesn't make mistakes. And the funny thing is that Ula, she doesn't have the same qualities in, let's say, talent and hand abilities that Agi has, but she really makes it up with hard work. So the thing that we're doing actually right now is we're trying to have a different coaching style for Ula and a different coaching style for Aga. Aga is a typical counter puncher, a very smart girl. She's tactically very intelligent. She knows what to do on court. Even she watches a player for 2 or 3 games and she knows what she would do with that player. She's in that way she's a lot like Tomic. Tomic on the men's side is a very similar player like that. He just watches a little bit of tennis and he knows straight away what he would do. Ula, on the other hand, she has to work to develop her all-round game, especially the offensive game, because she's not as good as a counter-puncher as Agi is. And I feel that Agi has got some qualities that make her exceptional because she does those things best in the world. Nobody can do it better. Nobody can hit a better drop shot. Nobody has better control than she has. Ula, on the other hand, has a lot of things that are very good, but not exceptional in her game. So that's what we're working on right now.
So how would Ula construct a point? Would it be start maybe a little bit more offensive, or would it be more defense transitioning to offense? How does the point construction work?
Well, the thing that we're working on right now is for her to play a little bit more offensive. She has, in my opinion, one of the maybe 5 best return games in women's tennis. But it has to be developed because the thing is she plays a lot of returns back. She can get the ball back from a lot of big serves, but she cannot hit a winner from the return. So we're trying to make her a little bit offensive on that side to take advantage of the return, and the same on the serve side. The thing is she serves with a high percentage of first serve, but then she doesn't, and she has a lot of variety on the serve, but then during big points she doesn't go for the ace. She doesn't pop the ace. And watching her practice, the funny thing about her is she has a very good level of concentration. When I put a can into one of the corners of the court, of the service box, and I tell her, okay, you have 3 balls to hit the can, she usually does it within 2 or 3 balls. And then during the match, she doesn't do it because she's thinking about different things. So one of the things that we're trying to develop right now is to take that quality of concentration and that precision of that serve and put it into big points, to concentrate on big points.
Okay, so there's 3 things I want to talk about. You kind of touched on the mental right there at the end. You touched on the strategy in terms of what you're trying to do on a big point, and then you talked about the return. So let's actually go the middle one first. Interesting. So on a big point, you would actually encourage her to go for an ace as opposed to, and what's the thought process behind that versus hitting a good serve but making sure the first serve goes in so that you're kind of in the driver's seat?
Yes, I feel there's 3 tactics behind a first serve. The first tactic, hit an ace to get a point. The second tactic is hit a half ace, a shot which the opponent cannot get back. And the third tactic is get a serve that the opponent cannot, that gives you an easy ball back.
You get the step in and strike.
Exactly, so you get the first ball back. And when Ula plays, especially with big hitters, she has very good, what we talked about, control in her hand, and she reacts very fast. So usually we don't think about hitting an ace every time, but to get the first serve in and react as fast as possible for the big shot coming back, and try to put it precisely in the other corner, right, to make the big hitting opponent run around.
But how, on that big point specifically, why are you being more aggressive with the serve?
Because she has to take her chance, right? She cannot wait for the point to be given to her because she knows the opponent is going to jump on her. And also, before let's say we start talking about big points, you have to help the player realize what a big point is, right? Because usually when you start a match, the first point of a match is not a big point, right? A big point happens when you have, let's say, 30-all or 40-15 or 30-40 when you have a break point in a serve. But then when it's 5-all in a set, a big point could actually be the first point in the in the game right there. So those are just situations. This happens after a match. When she finishes a match, we start talking what she thought was a big point in the match, what she thought was an important thing, and what she thought right there when she was doing that point.
Okay, interesting. They're very, very, very nice points there in terms of, like you said, the start of the match, the first point, whatever, but the exact same first point of a game, the importance has changed depending on the situation. Now, you also touched on how Ula has a great return.
Yeah.
Top 5, you said, I believe?
In my opinion,
In your
yes.
opinion. What makes her return so good, and what can a recreational player pull from that? Is it her positioning? Is it her hands? Is it her placement? Is it everything?
The contact point.
Okay.
She gets the ball every time in front of her, from the backhand side, from the forehand side, and the backhand side. Whatever. We practice a lot with guys, and usually guys have a faster serve, and a lot of the guys that come and hit with us are surprised that they hit a big first serve, and she just gets it back. She gets the ball straight back into the court. She has a lot of control in the hand, plus her reaction speed is very fast.
Mm-hmm. So where's she actually lining up to return? Is she right on the baseline, or does she play further
Very
back?
close, about half a meter to 30 centimeters behind the baseline.
Okay, so she's right up there.
Yeah.
And she's trying to cut off angles.
Yes.
And it sounds like she's very good at just getting the racket in front of the ball and using the serve pace.
Exactly.
And then where's the target? Return.
Usually during a first serve, she goes for the middle of the court. She wants to go hard for the middle of the court.
Back on the shoelaces.
Exactly, and we call it also a reactional return. Sometimes you don't know where the ball's coming, but you know, when you have a player, you have to know what her good side is, what her best sides are. And I know that reaction is a very good side for Ula. And when you ask her how you got this ball back, she won't tell you. She just knows she reacted and done it. So when she gets a big point, I usually was sitting on the side. I tell her, okay, trust your reactions, right? Trust what you feel right now, and it's going to be good. Concentrate and trust your reactions.
So great point here by Maciej. For the coaches out there, how understanding your player is so important. You can't coach just one way. It needs to be customized to your student. So excellent advice for coaches and parents, frankly. So let's come. The last point you mentioned was the mental game.
Yeah.
And let's touch on that a little bit, because you said you love the mental game. So
yes.
I'm going to sort of leave the floor to you. Do you want to talk about your general approach, big points?
Let me say what happened with Ula.
Okay.
When I met Ula 1 year ago, she came out of 2 big losses over here. She lost 6-4 in the third set playing in Indian Wells, and then she lost the next week 6-4 in the third set in Miami. And she was totally devastated. When we met, she went for about 15 minutes telling me all the things that are going bad in her tennis. She said, I lose so many matches 6-4 in the third. I just lost a coach because she was working with somebody else that didn't work. She said her forehand is bad, her arm is hurting again. She had all these problems, everything was bad. Okay. And then I was sitting there and listening to her, and I said, okay, Ula, but you have to understand you're a top 100 player in the world, right? And then I asked her, the second thing I asked her is, what were your dreams when you were a younger player, when you were 15, 16? And she said, my dream was to be a top 100 player. And I said, there you go, you are a top 100 player. And straight away from that, I could see her smiling. Yeah. And the second big thing that we did was we started talking about how her sister influences her tennis. And I told her that Agi being her sister is one of the best things that could have ever happened to her, and it's also one of the worst things that could ever happen to her. So thanks to the power of video editing, I'm now wearing sunglasses because the sun during the last Maciej was talking, and it got brighter and brighter, and I started just squinting, and I basically ended up blind like this. So we had to cut. But Maciej, you were talking about the Agi being Ula's sister is a blessing and a curse, I guess you could say. Yes, so why don't we pick up with that? You can well, it's a blessing in a way that they live together. So she wakes up every day next to a top 5 player, so she knows what Agi actually does, how she practices, how she works out, how she eats, how she sleeps, what she thinks. And occurs in that way that they're totally different people, and in a physical way, in a sports way, they're totally different people. Agi is very, very talented. Ula is also very talented, but has to be really hardworking to get what Agi has naturally. And actually, once we said that, and once we established that with Ula, you could see just straight away that she was on the right tracks, because she understood that she has to do different things. She cannot do everything that Aga does, and you have to understand that all their life they've been hitting together,
sure.
Right? And once they go on court, and you can see that Agi, she hits the ball she cannot play. I mean, she could stop playing tennis for a week, and she would still hit the ball with the same quality.
Right.
Where most of us, if we stop playing for a week, we cannot get the same rhythm, and we cannot get the ball the same way into the court. And Ula, watching that, got very tense, because she couldn't hit the ball the same way. So once she understood that she's a totally different player, and she doesn't have to have the same qualities as Agi has, but she has to understand what her qualities are, that actually just changed her and opened her and made her play better tennis.
Okay, yeah. The some of the concepts you were discussing there, to go back to what you were saying earlier, where she was really down on herself, coming out of Indian Wells in Miami. Sometimes the concept is called a reframe. You just take an issue and you just look at it from a different perspective. You're saying, oh man, this is so bad, and then you look at it from a different perspective. Well, actually, you've achieved your goal of being a top 100 player, and so on. And then you're like, oh, you know what? That's a good way to good perspective, and it just changes the way you approach everything moving forward. So great advice. Is there more? So we're into the mental game here. So you've reframed Ula's perspective on the game, and then you've gotten her to work on her game in a way that's right for her.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Yes.
So moving forward, I mean, is there a particular thing you want to talk about, or I want to kind of push things towards big points, because that's
okay. We can
continue with your story.
Another important thing that happened is within 1 month I made two documents. I think it's very important to write down some things at some point. And one document was called Ula's Attributes, and it was underlined. Underneath I wrote a sentence, what makes Ula different from other players? And there's a bunch of things written down there. Even now, every week I find small little things that make her different from other players in her game. And one of those things was to help her understand that her return is a very good shot, that she has a very good all-round game, she's very smart tactically, she has great concentration. We're all the time we're working on how to, because you can say, okay, somebody has great concentration, but how do you win a match having great concentration, right? So we're working that out. The second document is called The Approach, how to approach certain situations. And one of the first things that's written down there is you don't have to play perfect tennis to win a tennis match, because before we met, Ula thought in her mind, she thought she has to hit every single ball perfect, every single point perfect to win a tennis match. And then I just took her, she never watches other tennis matches besides men's tennis, she never watches women's tennis matches. So I took her to some matches. It was very hard to take her to convince her to come, but she came, we sat down, and I told her, look, is this player playing her best tennis? She says no. Is this player playing the best tennis? She says no. And she started realizing that what I said, you don't have to play each shot perfectly, you just have to know when to play the right points, and you have to know what your strengths are and what are the weaknesses of the other person.
I think that's so big, because I've certainly experienced this, and I'm sure many people watching this, when the conditions aren't perfect or something's wrong, it almost sometimes becomes an excuse to lose.
Yes.
And you say, you know what, it's too windy today, I can't get it done. You know what, the sun suddenly comes out, I can't do this interview because I'm blind now. Luckily I had sunglasses, but it is interesting how a match is probably never going to be perfect, right?
Exactly.
You're never going to play a match and never make an unforced error.
That's the second point that we have written down on the approach.
Oh, oops, I'm stealing your thunder. Continue.
So I think it's very important to understand when you play tennis, usually, let's say on a club level, you play 3-4 times a week, yes? So that makes what, 150 times per year that you play, maybe 100 times per year. It's impossible to especially also in professional tennis, when you get that, when you play 4 hours per day for 300 days per year, it's impossible to get out for every single hour and play good tennis. So you have to understand that tennis is a sport where you don't always get to play your best game, right? And then the second important thing is it's an individual sport. It all depends on how you feel and about you. In basketball, in soccer, you can be the 7th guy, the 5th guy, the 11th guy, and if you have an off day, the rest of the guys can win the match for you, right? And you're not a loser. And in tennis, it's an individual sport. Every time you lose, you stay with your loss. Let's say in Europe, soccer is very big, so I like this example that the best soccer teams, Real Madrid, Manchester United, Barcelona, they lose 5 or 6 matches per year, right? Where the coach comes out and says, okay, on this match my best players were injured, we couldn't play with the best players. On this match the other team was better. On this match my team was down. And on this match the referee made a mistake and we lost the match, right? It all like sums up. In tennis, a player that's ranked 50 or even a top 10 or a top 20 player usually loses about 15 to 25 matches per year, and that's 15, 25 times you have to come off court and you have to find a solution to what to do next.
Yeah. All right, so to Maciej, to close our chat, this has been awesome stuff. Let's talk about those big points, because you had mentioned at the top that that Ula in practice is sometimes almost more focused.
Yes.
And she can hit the cans no problem, and then in a big point maybe that becomes a little bit looser. What do you think is behind that?
Well, when you play a match, you play for several things. You play for points, you play for ranking points, you play for prestige, you play for fame, you play in front of a lot of people, and you play for money. And on the other hand, you have somebody on the other side that wants to beat you. Yeah. Right. So that puts a lot of, let's say, what we call pressure on you, right? Yeah. So when you feel insecure, when you don't know what your attributes are, it's very easy to lose your confidence on court, right? And when you know that, let's say, concentration is your big attribute, then you know that whatever happens around, you can just focus and concentrate on hitting the can right there. So that's actually what I tell her. Think of the can. Sometimes when I do on-court coaching, I tell her, we think about small things. There are some small things during practice. Let's say hit the ball a little bit higher during the serve. Remember to go to make the second phase of the serve faster, to go up with your legs. Small little things. So when I tell her, when I sit courtside and I see that there's a big point, I just tell her to remember one small thing and then to concentrate.
That's interesting. So basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what you're saying is performance in a big point and coming up big on those big points has a lot to do with really understanding yourself and knowing what you're really good at, so that you can have the confidence to execute when you're up there. That's it.
Because as I said, you play for all those things. You have somebody on the other side that wants to beat you. There's no space inside to be insecure. You have to be very self-confident to take all these things on your back and to succeed.
And it sounds like, is that document you were writing where you have like the attributes and everything, what makes her special, that must be part of that process, right? Here's why you're awesome, here's what you're good
exactly,
at.
Exactly. It's very often we go back to these things. Very often when I talk to her and she says, okay, let's say this and this player had such a huge serve, then I counterattack her and say, you have a big return. And the question is, going on today's match, is she going to hit better serves, or are you going to hit better returns? It's always finding a solution. It's always helping the player understand, okay, somebody does this good, but you do this good, and how that matches against each other.
Maciej, this was awesome stuff, man. Thanks so much for taking the time. It's always great to hear different perspectives, like creative thought processes, which this has certainly been one of the most creative sort of thought process we've had in a sit down like this. So this is great stuff. I can't wait to watch the tape and sort of take notes and everything. So
well, I hope now that watching Ula play, you can understand more of what's going on in her head, and then possibly if she wins a match and you see that she does something good in a big point, maybe hits an ace straight in the middle during a big point, you know that exactly what happened right there.
Absolutely. Well, this is great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks.